What's up everybody, it's Sean here, back today to give you guys a review of the Nike SB Air Max 95 in this Summit White and Cactus Flower colorway. Have you ever taken out a pair of your older grails and find out that they're crumbling? Well, the sponsor for today's video has a solution for you. So thank you to Capsule for sponsoring today's video. Capsule is a new product on the market which helps to preserve your sneakers, extend their lives by up to 2 times, and it tackles the 2 main reasons why your shoes age, fade, and crumble over time, which is hydrolysis and oxidization. So the products look like this. So this is a UV protective pod, which is where you store your shoes inside, and it's completely airtight. But while this looks nice, the actual secret sauce comes in the form of a cartridge. So this cartridge contains a scientifically backed formula, essentially some sort of gas which you inject into this pod, and that not only pushes out the bad air containing the dirt and the oxygen, but it fills this pod with a preservative, which is what your shoes sit inside. And this preservative is the ideal state to keep your shoes in if you're not rocking them. So I was a bit skeptical at first, but trust me, this is scientifically backed, and it went through a rigorous testing process, comparing the results of a shoe that's just kept in a box versus a shoe kept in this capsule preservative, and the results speak for themselves. So this is best used for those grail type sneakers, the ones that you wear sparingly. The rest of the time they're just sitting on a shelf in your shoebox. So by keeping it in this ideal state, this ensures that it can last a lot longer than it would if you didn't use capsule. So I'll link their socials, their website, all that good stuff down below. So check them out, do your own research. And if you do decide to check them out, tell them that you heard about them through my channel. So this right here is the much anticipated Nike SB version of the iconic Nike Air Max 95. Originally released as a performance running shoe back in the mid-90s, fast forward 20 years later and Nike SB has given it a skateboarding twist. Even though it's not necessarily a shoe that you think of to rock while skateboarding, they've modified certain parts of this shoe to make it much more board friendly. So this is the debut colorway and they dropped earlier this month, and officially the colorway for this shoe is Summit White, Cactus Flower, Photon Dust, Cool Gray, Black, and Gum Yellow. And they retail for a price of, I believe, $185 US or $230 here in Canada. So I've been hearing a lot of hype surrounding this shoe. It took me a little while to get my pair, but I was very curious to see, are these actually a lot more comfortable than a normal Air Max 95? How do they fit? And do the changes on the shoe actually make a significant difference in terms of the underfoot feel? Well, we'll get into all those questions later on in this video. My first thought when I saw this colorway though is that it really reminds me of the Comet Red Air Max 95. That's one of the OG colorways, but instead of red, obviously it has accents of this pale purple sort of tone, which I think looks really, really nice. So jumping into the details of the shoe itself, on the toe box, like any other Air Max 95, we have this fork-shaped overlay, and this is constructed out of a fairly thick cut of genuine suede. So this was nice to see that they actually utilize thick cut genuine leathers. And then next to this, covering the majority of the upper portion of the shoe, we have a white colored mesh. Where the eyelets are, we have a black colored mesh, which kind of looks like the mesh you'd see on basketball shorts. And then for the eyelets, we have these purple colored woven eyelets like a typical Air Max 95. On the side panels of the shoe, retaining the classic look of the Air Max 95, we have these 4 layers of different materials. So the top layer is a genuine black leather, and then we have 3 layers of suede, which is done in this gradient style where it goes from a darker gray on the top to more of a cream color on the bottom. And one thing to note is that on these side panels, they actually wrap the edges downwards before stitching it down. So if you look from the side, the cross section, you can see how the leather is folded down, giving you a little bit more durability for those that are using these to skateboard. And then on the lateral heel, we have a purple colored embroidered swoosh. Covering the heel, we have this reflective 3M layer in silver, and we have Nike SB Air branding at the very top in this purple color. Running down the center of the tongue, we have this large reflective 3M layer in silver. The bottom half of the tongue is covered in a black colored mesh, whereas the top is done in this white color, and we have Air Max branding on the very top, done in a mix of black, white, and purple. And you'll see how there's an elastic connecting the tongue to the base of the shoe. This gives you added lockdown, which is obviously very important for those that are actually skating in these. The interior of the shoe, this is nothing special here. This is covered in a black colored liner. And then for the insoles, these come with a typical foam lined insole. It's mesh lined on top, and we have Nike SB Air Max branding pressed onto the heel. So the upper of the Air Max 95 sits atop this polyurethane foam midsole, which is painted in white. We have air units visible on the forefoot as well as the heel. And one thing to note is that because they want to give the shoe more ground feel, this version of the Air Max 95 isn't the remastered big bubble version. So this is more of your classic Air Max 95 from years past with a slightly thinner air unit, which makes sense because you don't really want to be sitting too high off the ground. Turning the shoe over to the bottom, so the outsole here is crafted out of gum rubber. We still have that classic look with these horizontal grooves to give you added flexibility, but instead of your traditional waffle style lugs, for this version of the Air Max 95, it replaces it with herringbone to give you more traction and more grip. So you can see how it runs all the way to the heel of the shoe. And running down the center, your typical Air Max 95, the TPU plate is usually very stiff and it's basically unbendable. But for this SB version, it's actually quite soft, so it has a lot more bend and a lot more flexibility to it, which is another performance feature added to make the shoe more skatable. So that breaks down the look and the construction of this shoe. And for those wondering about how these fit, so this is the biggest question that a lot of people have about this pair. In my typical Air Max 95s, I usually almost always have to go up half a size. So in my case, I'm a true size 10, slightly on the wider side, and I wear a size 10.5 in almost all my Air Max 95s. However, this shoe, they've completely flipped the script. First of all, the upper is a lot more broken in. It doesn't feel as constricting, and the materials just have more of a flexible feel. In addition to that, they've also lowered the height of the insole in terms of how high it sits on the midsole. So because of that, your foot is sitting a little bit lower, a little bit closer to the ground. So for all those reasons, this shoe fits a lot more true to size. So I got these in my normal true size, which is a size 10, and they fit me very comfortably, not snug whatsoever. I even know a couple of friends that prefer to go a half size down from their normal Nike size. For me, I don't need to go down that route. Sticking true to size is good for me. But let's just say whatever size you normally wear for your typical Air Max 95s, go a half size lower for this version. Moving on to the comfort, so I've been hearing a lot of things about the comfort of this shoe, how people are saying it's the most comfortable Air Max 95 they've ever worn. So my expectations were sky high getting into this, and after trying these on and wearing these for a little bit, honestly I was a little bit disappointed. Yes, they're comfortable in the sense that the upper is very broken in, they don't feel restrictive whatsoever, but in terms of the underfoot feel, I didn't really feel like they were like a major upgrade. You definitely have a lot more ground feel. You notice that you just feel like you're closer to the ground, and that definitely makes sense if you're actually skating in these. But if you're like me and you're just rocking these casually, I was expecting something a little bit more plush, but the cushioning underfoot felt kind of stiff. Maybe it's just a matter of having to break them in, but my initial thoughts were that they weren't a drastic difference compared to a normal Air Max 95, aside from the fact that you have more ground feel. But sound off below if you disagree with me. Maybe it's just a matter of having to break them in. Leave your thoughts down below of how you find the comfort of this version. Finally, in terms of the quality and the craftsmanship, so first off, material quality I thought was really solid. They use a mix of meshes, there's some synthetic materials, but they do utilize genuine leathers and suedes, which was very nice to see. So this feels like a slightly beefed up version of a normal Air Max 95, and I thought the overall build of the shoe was decent too. The one thing I really liked was the overall shape of the toe box. It has this nice sort of tapered look instead of a typical banana shaped look that some of the Air Max 95s had back in the past. So all in all, while I wasn't blown away by the comfort, I thought the end product, just having these in hand, the overall feel and quality was really solid. So with all that out of the way now, let's toss these on feet, I'll lace them up, and I'll show you guys how these look. All in all, I think this is a great debut colorway of the Nike SB Air Max 95. I'm assuming that Nike's gonna drop more colorways down the road. If they didn't, it's kind of a missed opportunity. And while I wouldn't necessarily say it's by far the most comfortable version of the Air Max 95 I've ever worn, I do like the added ground feel on this shoe, and I love how they fit a lot more comfortable, especially being able to go true to size. So leave your thoughts down below, let me know what do you guys think about this Air Max 95 by Nike SB. For anyone watching, did you also pick up a pair of these? And if you did, what are your thoughts now that you have them in hand? Sound off down below and let's talk about it. And as usual, if you guys enjoyed this review, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. You can follow me on my social media accounts. I'll link all that down below. And again, another huge thank you to Capsule for sponsoring today's video. So until next time, thanks everyone for tuning in, and I'll catch you all in my next video.